We lost weight without trying. Brain fog went away. We slept better. Just everything changed at that point in time. And that was 20 years ago.
Well, welcome back to Fasting Food Faith. I'm Brianne Sims, RN.
Dr. Sam Sims, nurse anesthesiologist.
And we have a very special guest today, Sheri Johnson, one of my good friends. And I have known Sheri for quite a while, more than 3 years,
Hard to believe.
like 4 years now. Yeah. So we met at a women's business conference, and then along with Sheri and two other ladies, we have been doing a podcast together that used to be the Christian Women's Health Collective. It's now called He Met Me in the Middle. We're sharing testimonies about how God meets us in our lives, real lives where we are right now. And we've been doing some really fun interviews over there, and Sheri just has an amazing story, an amazing business, Empowered Health Coaching, and she's just recently done a bunch of functional nutrition education and furthering her education. And so I just kind of want to have her start by just sharing a little bit of her story.
Thank you. And it's exciting to be here. I really appreciate it and having your platform and all that you do, because I believe in the fasting and what you're bringing to the world as well, because there's so many different modalities that we can bring together to help with our healing. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, my story is an interesting one, and it starts with my youngest, Jordan. So Jordan, it's really something that you don't forget. We were sitting there in the waiting room, and all of a sudden the pediatrician came in and he said, Jordan has ADHD, visual and auditory processing issues, as well as sensory integration. And we were like, what? What are all those things? And how do we handle that? And so, we started looking at her because she was only 7 years old. And now she was already labeled. And the only thing that the doctor had for us was medication, ADHD medication. And we knew we didn't want to go there yet. We tried other modalities and we looked at other things. And Jordan as kids with ADD, ADHD, they are really, really smart. And we saw this little girl struggling, and we knew she was very capable. And so it was really hard. Some of the things we tried, they helped, but she was still struggling in school. Her grades were not good. And it was just really hard to watch. So come third grade, we decided to go ahead and put her on medication. And that was a really hard decision. And she was prescribed Stratera, or as we called it to make it more fun, her little blue pill. And so Jordan took this little blue pill. She was so young, she couldn't even swallow pills at that point, so we had to mix it up in some applesauce so that she could take it. So here's a drug that she's prescribed that she can't even take, and so she starts taking the medication. She starts doing better in school, she can sit down, she can stay focused, her grades come up, and her confidence really comes up.
Yeah.
But the problem was she didn't feel good. She didn't feel good on this medication, and so it was really, really hard, every morning to give her this medication, to watch her just not feel well and then have to go off to school. And so at that point, I was really looking into what else can I do? What else can we do for Jordan? And I started looking more holistically, more naturally. And I found this practitioner, and he told me something I'll never forget. He said, Jordan is not deficient in Stratera, and she never was. And I'm like, whoa. Jordan's not deficient in this medication. And that just like hit me hard. And I was just like, wow. And that makes so much sense, right? So at that point in time, working with him, we started weaning her off of this medication. And at the same time, I'm changing our whole family's diet. And so, and our lifestyle. So we're doing this balance, moving everybody over. And it wasn't easy at all. My children were 11 and 13 years old, which is really not a great age to start changing their diets. But we started changing them, and Jordan continued to excel in school. And she went through middle school with all A's and 1B. She went on to high school. She was in travel soccer, travel volleyball. She was in thespians and drama. and was on National Honor Society in high school. And then she also went on to FSU, or Florida State University, and she got a bachelor's and a master's, was on the dean's list every semester and finished in 4.5 years, all without that little blue pill. So, what that to me is, it's just the power of real food, and changing your lifestyle can make such a big difference, because every medication comes with side effects, and some of them are serious. And so, being educated and taking a look at what are those side effects, and am I willing to potentially have those side effects? And a lot of times those medications create a deficiency. And so when they create a deficiency, then often there's, more medications put on top, because we've got to take care of those different deficiencies. So that's basically our story. But one thing that I would like to say also in that is that in 2021, Jordan came back and I asked her, I said, I know you couldn't articulate it at that point in time, and you told me you didn't feel good. Do you know why you didn't feel good? And she told me, I realize now I had suicidal thoughts. And I'm like, wow, thank God we got her off
Mm.
of that
Child.
medication.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, she took it from about 8 to 11 years old. And, so Jordan is now, in June, she'll be 31 years old. And she's still not on any medications. In fact, really none of us are on any medications, and we're still feeling great. And, it's not easy to make those changes, but I mean, pretty quickly, because God made our bodies so forgiving, and they start healing pretty quickly, that when we get out of the way and we let that happen, we put in good nutrition, then we do have the energy. We lost weight without trying. I mean, brain fog went away. We slept better. Just everything changed at that point in time, and that was 20 years ago. Yeah.
And you've been consistent with it too. It's incredible what real food and nutrition does for your body and your health.
It really is, because once you make those changes and you experience it, it's like, why would I want to go back? We all had to break free of sugar also. That was another side side issue, because even my husband was drinking the case of Coke at that point in time. So that's,
Yeah.
coming off of a lot of sugar. I loved sugar and sweets, and so did the girls. So that's, all the things that we had to go through. But I guess, just giving hope too to people, it can happen and you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it, honestly.
I actually haven't heard your story. So what I really like about it was the fact is that you had this experience where you weren't sure your daughter wanted to be on medication, and then you had a positive experience initially with the medication, but also noticed the side effect that started to happen. And interesting that your daughter couldn't. You can now know what the side effect was, and that is a side effect of those medications. But to go to natural food and actually basically heal your body that way, and we see this in medications that we give in anesthesia, where we give one medication, but it also has a side effect profile that we also have to give another medication at the exact same time with, because one medication can make reverses a paralytic, but it can make your heart stop. So you have to give another medication so that it makes your heart rate go up. We treat the side effects too with with more meds.
Right.
So that's very interesting. And then also you said you had all the sugar you had to get rid of, and sugar is the preferred taste of any mammal, because you can put on fat quickly and survive with sweet foods, and so that is a
Mm.
survival mechanism of mammals. And so when people say I have a sweet tooth, I'm like, I believe you. But we don't
Yeah.
need we you used to get sweets, you had to tap into a tree and you had to boil it off, and you only got, a certain amount of sugar every year that you had to ration, or you had to go fight a bumblebee, or not a bumblebee, but a
Mhm.
honeybee to get your honey,
We
you
yeah.
know? And so you had access to sweet foods, but it took a lot of work, and then it was rationed. And even in Proverbs, it talks about don't eat too much honey, or you'll throw up.
Mm.
And so there is, even though you could have access to it, the king would have access to probably an unlimited supply, but the rest of us didn't. So people say when you have to work yourself off sugar, that is totally a normal. It's a survival mechanism of of
Yeah.
of basically feast and famine. And if you don't have food in the wintertime, sugar will make you fat to survive your wintertime. but but We don't need
right?
that anymore. Yeah, we have overabundance and over access of sweets.
And I would say that sugar they were going for at that point in time was honey, and honey is a lot better source of sugar than what people are eating now because and this was several years ago, and I do wonder if the statistics have changed, but the average person eats 125 pounds of sugar a year, and that's crazy because I know that you all are not eating that much, and I'm not eating that much, which means there's people that are eating way more than that, right? And
Yeah.
over 100
Right,
years
that's the
ago
average.
right?
Yeah.
Right, and over 100 years ago, a family of 4 would eat, like, 10 pounds of sugar.
Because
So
it was reserved for very special things, a treat.
mhm,
You still see also made cookies or they made cake, but it was on very rare occasions. And then if you had a cookie, you had one because the whole family had to eat a cookie, and then that's all we had for the day, or the week.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. And then we were also very active at that point in time too. We weren't, sitting on the couch with a remote control. So, yeah, so we were actually working off the sugar, so to speak, and not saying that you can eat a bunch of sugar and then just go work it off at the gym because that's not really the way it works.
And it was real sugar too. Now we have artificial sweeteners, all those other kind of things. One of the things
Oh my god.
I like to be able to tell people to do is go just Google a picture of a beach in the 1960s. And that's it. I mean, because
Mhm.
Coke was a small Coke, and you drink a little bit of it, and it had real sugar. Just Google beach in the 1960s, and then try to find the fat person, and then Google a beach picture now, and try to find the skinny person.
It's true. It's true. Or go to Europe and then you can like a mile away you can see an American because they're the ones that are heavy walking around. And it's crazy. And they probably would lose weight over there because they're not having all the things that are so readily available here, as well as just the things that are not allowed in our food over there that unfortunately we allow here. So it's
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly. That's another thing I was gonna say that just like the sugar is in all of our food here. Like it is in like they put it in everything. The manufacturers do because people will eat more of it and buy more of it and eat more of it and buy more of it. And so it's about the money, it's not about health.
Well, it's also very
Oh,
cheap.
Yeah.
It's a cheap ingredient, so like that's why like a lot of times you'll find tomato sauce has or marinara sauce has added sugar into it because tomatoes and olive oil and all those other things those are more expensive. But if I can take those out and replace them with a cheap ingredient that then makes you want to eat more of my product, that's another thing that
yeah.
they do. So it's a cheap ingredient that makes you want to eat more.
Exactly, exactly, and I have, one of the programs that I do, I have this list that I give people because 'cause I'm helping them move to eating real food. I have a list of over and there's probably more, 126 names for sugar. That's another thing like you were talking about on the ingredient list, they'll use multiple different types of sugar, so sugar is not at the top of the list, but it might be down further on the list, but then there's all these other things that are also sugar in the ingredients, and it's like it's crazy. It really is, and we wonder why we have sweet tooth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pop Tarts are one they have 4 ingredients for sugar so that the wheat flour can be number 1.
They
Yeah,
separate
well,
out
and
into
which
4 ingredients instead of sugar being the first ingredient, they use 4 different kinds so they could label it under different names, so it won't be the first ingredient, yeah.
exactly, and then wheat, what it's a carb and it turns to sugar in your body too, so you got all these different, all these carbs going on in your body, and you wonder why I'm getting heavy, so,
Mhm.
yeah, because your body doesn't need all that.
Exactly.
That just creates a whole different issue. Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
you had this experience with turning to proper nutrition, healing your family, everyone getting healthier. But I know that you were a computer programmer for a long time, but that's not what you do now. So will you just talk a little bit about that transition and how that happened and what you are doing now?
Yeah, actually, transitioning was a God story, and it was funny because I was a software developer when I was going through this whole thing. So we're changing our family's diet, and so I was not gonna make different meals for everybody because I didn't have time. I was running from that job, working 40 plus hours, picking up my kids and taking them to all the things. And so we were gonna have all the same meals. So just keep that in mind too, that, that's don't make different meals for everybody, is what I want to say. We figured it out. One night I was leaving work and I was like, God, is this really all there is? I go to work, I come home, I go to work, and I do the same thing, and I have a short weekend, and I come back and do it again. And then the next morning, I got up and I said, yeah, I was moving stuff around, and I said, oh God, please give me some time to declutter. And a couple hours later, he let me go from that job, and I was like, okay, what did you
Wow.
ask for? Right? I had been there over 25 years at that particular place. I'd been a software developer for 33 years, and I was like, wow, okay. And I wasn't really upset either. So I know that God was working on my heart. I knew that it wasn't me because like over 100 people were let go that day. I left and I said something to my functional medicine practitioner about it. And she said, I think you'd make a really good health coach. And I was like, I thought about it, but it's not something that I, knew how to do or where to get to. And so she goes, I got some information. Let me send it to you. So she did. And I read up on it and I listened to some of their videos, and they were starting up in the next week or two. They were starting a new cohort. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And so I told her, I said, I'd love to know somebody that actually went through this so I could ask them questions. And so I did. She said, I have a friend who did, so let me connect you. And so we got connected, and it sounded really good. So then a week later, I had to make a decision within a week. And I did connect with somebody in the program that was kind of like, that worked for them, that was kind of, guiding, and like a salesperson, I guess. Interestingly enough, they hooked me up with somebody in Florida because this was an international program. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then we had a hurricane bearing down on us, Hurricane Irma. It was a big hurricane that came through. And I was supposed to make a decision to go through this program on September 11th, which is when the hurricane came through. And I said something to her because we're both like, do you have a generator? Do you not? How are you guys doing? And I mean, we're, throughout the storm connecting. She goes, look, this extenuating circumstances, and you probably could, wait. And I said, you know what? No, I'm in. I want to do this. And so I joined, and that's where the journey started with, I got certified holistic health coach, and then certified holistic life coach. And then I went on and got some higher mastery and transformational coaching certifications also. And then in the last couple years, I felt like God was saying, I'm to level up again. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I started down the path of functional nutrition counselor. And then that morphed into the next level, which is functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. The certifications I now have. And I'm also currently working on a therapeutic nutrition and supplement certification as well. But
So much learning. And you shared some of that on our podcast that we do together with Julie and Leanne. And it's been amazing to hear about all of that and the different things that you're learning. And so, yeah, it's
mm,
just really awesome. So what do you offer people who are like, hey, I really need help with my nutrition, or I need help with my just lifestyle. I want to be healthier.
In addition to that, because I don't think a lot of people know what a functional nutritional practitioner is, and I hope I even said it right.
That's true.
So could you,
Probably should,
yeah,
yeah.
can you, since that's what you're going for, or if maybe you already are that, I may have missed that.
yeah,
Could you explain that what that is for people, and then what
sure.
you offer, please?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So functional nutrition, I think, is becoming more known, or functional medicine, and they both use the same principles. Functional means we look at the whole body. God made us a whole body. God didn't make a heart and lungs and a brain, because you go to all those different doctors, right? But when we work with somebody, we're looking at the whole body. How does it work together? We need to know what the impacts are from each thing, because what somebody comes in and presents with, whatever their diagnosis is, may not be what the root cause is. So we're digging down into finding out what is creating, these issues for this person by looking and diving into the root cause of these things. So being a software developer who looks for the root cause of things has really helped me in that area, because our whole motto was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it is, let's go for the root problem so that we can fix it. Otherwise, again, we're band-aiding it, and you're never going to have true resolution on that. We use real food, God food, to help people heal, and we work together as partners through this whole thing. When I work with somebody, we do partner together, and I also partner with any other practitioners that they're working with. So it's more of a team thing. So I'm helping at this level, and maybe they do need to go to, a cardiologist, but I can also bring in some of the natural things that they want to do that. Back to, the medications and how they do create all these issues that may create the need for another medication. I have a book that's about that thick that tells you this medication causes these deficiencies. And so you need to take these supplements. And more doctors, fortunately, are realizing like people who have heart issues, they might need CoQ10 if they get put on that statin. And I'm so glad because it does create that problem, and magnesium, another one. So it's, what's being depleted when you take these medications.
Is that a reference book or? Yeah. Is that a reference book or is that a book that you wrote? The book?
I did not write the book.
Okay.
No. Unfortunately, it is not like, written in 2024, 2025. It's back a ways, but it was written by a pharmacist. So
Interesting.
yeah,
That's really cool.
no, it is because I'll look at that if somebody tells me they're on different medications, and then I can see, well, oh, okay, well, we might need to test for these things because I'd prefer not to guess and do tests. Although we know, there are certain things most people are deficient in, magnesium being one, vitamin D more than likely. But you don't want to get to crazy levels of that either. So
Yeah.
that's to go in and find out.
Yeah, lab work is important. We found that with fasting also. Just you do need some lab work and just some some numbers
To see what
to work with.
yeah,
Yes.
to see what changes. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you talk, we already talked about honey, but obviously we don't want to eat too much of honey. But is there? I mean, I know an individual can have an allergy and they may have a food that's off limits to them specifically. But do you guys? Are there specific like basically God's foods that you say that nobody can have or you should never have, or is this kind of individually catered?
So really what I do is more personalized because each person is unique as God made each person unique. So when I work with somebody, it is going to be more personalized. We're going to look at, I have a lot of different questionnaires and whatnot that they'll fill out so that I can see what are they doing and how can I start helping them take those baby steps intentionally to, start getting rid of some of these things. But like, I might eat avocado and it might be great for me, but it might not be a great food for you. So it's, we don't know. And it's also tuning into the body and finding out what works and doesn't work for that person as well. So somebody has an issue with sugar, I'm going to help them, get down off of that because that's just going to, create issues with glucose and insulin issues. So they don't need to continue down that path. Sugar causes a lot of health issues, excessive sugar. And I mean, if you have a problem, then you really do need to nip it. Been there and done one.
And I know that you do have a sugar detox program on your website, right?
I do have, it's like a mini little do-it-yourself type program that somebody can do if they want to do that. But like right now, I'm running a
If you want to
liver.
start there.
Yeah, it's a mini course. If you do have an issue, it's a quick, but it gives you a lot of great techniques on, how you can come down off that sugar. And of course, I can always help somebody too, if they have questions. I do.
Well, I think if the average is 120 pounds, there's a lot of people that have that issue. So
Now, whether they want to get off of it, that's another issue. So,
That's where they need the coaching part of what you offer.
yeah, exactly.
Help motivate.
there's nothing like accountability and support, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, especially with fasting. Too. Speaking of fasting, we like to ask all of our podcast guests, do you fast?
Thanks to my buddy Bree and Sam. Yes. This week I didn't do some fasting, but I try to take like one day and, take a break from food or at least, back it into my, mostly liquids. I do know because we've talked about it that my body composition is right on that edge of whether I should or not because my body fat BMI is right there. And so I
Yes.
fortunately I don't need to lose a lot of weight, but I will, if I do fast for a day, I will lose some weight. But I do think it's a great break for people. And if you do not do an extended 24-hour or 36 is what I was trying to do, is, at least intermittent, at least giving your body that break, from food.
So I guess you kind of answered that question. I was going to ask what your favorite way to fast is, or maybe like what your favorite fast is that you've ever done and why. Do you have one that you did for any particular reason?
No, I mean I've done that, just like the 24, 36 hour, mostly just extending the time. It's what, generally I will do. So but that's day to day. And then sometimes I'll add in a longer like that. So I haven't done anything longer than that.
Well,
That's
and I appreciate that
yeah.
you're also not only like, but you're recognizing your own body that you're like, look, I have a certain amount of reserve, and it's a different amount of reserve than other people have, and so I have to be more careful. I have a stop point that other people don't have. Some people can go longer if they're carrying a lot of excess weight. If you're carrying excess 10 pounds, then you can technically fast for over 2 weeks. But if you're not, you got to be careful and say there is a stop point, and if I'm close to that, I have to be careful about when I fast. And that's one of the things we try to teach people. It's like, yeah, you do have a stop point. And I appreciate that I mean, I know you're mindful of all these things, but you're also mindful of how long you can do something safely.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
thank
that's
you. No,
perfect.
I heard Bree say something about that, and I was like, oh wait, I do need to be mindful about that. So yeah, no, thank you. And it's individualized too. I think everything is
Okay.
individual, personalized for the person. You know, it's for me unique.
Since you are a
Exactly.
functional nutritionalist practitioner, but since you are that and you fast,
I
what
am
do you have like a go-to food or go-to meal or something that you like to break your fast with?
not really. Usually, I'm heading into and I'll just eat something light before I head into working out. So, because that's where I'll stop it because I've noticed, sometimes I feel like, yeah, I could probably work out because I do hit training.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
I
a
know
very
that I
active
used
person,
to.
so
Yeah, no, I know that I've had issues with sugar, with the dropping and being hangry, and that's all sugar related. So if you get hangry, that's sugar related. So yeah, but no, I don't really, and that's probably something I need to listen to more of what you teach on that. I don't think I've heard, and I haven't necessarily, even educated myself well in that area. So if I was if I had somebody that was interested in fasting, I would probably say, look, you need to listen to these people. I'm not necessarily the one to
well,
teach you
that's
how to fast. So
that's
because
that's
I'm not the
exactly
expert in that.
why you're here, because if someone wants one-on-one coaching for their nutrition, we do not offer that, and you do an incredible job with that, so,
Yeah,
Oh,
we tell
thank
them eat
you.
God's food, and then we tell them now we go talk to Sheri, and I'm like, what God's food you're supposed to eat?
yeah.
And it is
What's your plan
important
with your Yeah.
if you've done that much work to fast, because that is work. It's especially in the beginning, it's going to feel like work. This is going to be like, why
Yeah.
am I doing this? Did I really sign up for this? That you want to stay with that momentum and, start putting better food into your body if you haven't been so that you can maintain that. Because if you go right back to what you were doing, then you're going to get more of what you had. So
Sure.
definitely. And I am a functional nutrition and lifestyle practitioner. I did go through those certifications and get those.
Oh,
So you were asking, and yeah, so,
I knew it.
but
Keep it.
You sounded like one. I was pretty sure. I just want to make sure I didn't misunderstand.
whatever you are.
She
Oh,
has all the
no.
credentials.
Uh,
Um,
Great.
but so I also know that you have a ton of resources on your website, empoweredhealthcoaching.com, correct?
That's correct.
And there's lots of things that you can go and sign up for. She also has this incredible blog with tons of really good information. And I'm also going to toot Sherry's horn because she's also involved in legislature and fighting for the health of people in Florida where she lives. And so she's very very active in the nutrition community. So you would benefit greatly from going to, yeah, follow her on all of her social medias and signing up for her newsletter and reading her blogs. Yeah, just I really encourage you to go check out all the information that she's put out there because it is so, so helpful and so well researched. So thank you
Thank
so much for joining us,
I
Sherry.
appreciate it. Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate being on.
Yeah, I really
Y'all
hope
are
that we
doing
can have
some
you on
awesome.
again soon.
Yeah, I said you all are doing some awesome work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we're enjoying it. We really hope that we can have you on again soon, and maybe we can talk more about the health of our nation right now and what's going on. And that just
Yeah.
is really be a really fun conversation to have with you. So hopefully we'll be able
I
to
would
have you
love
on
to.
again soon. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you will go give Sherry a like and a follow. We will love it if you commented on this video and give us some questions for her. That would be awesome. And also share this with your friends and family, especially if you know anyone who needs to reduce their sugar intake. So thanks for being here.
Go fast, eat God's food, and be blessed.